thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Our podcast is all about your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Okay.
So why don't
How
you tell
did
me?
I get here?
We'll find out momentarily.
Hey, is there anything that's specifically? I've listened to a few of your podcasts, and one thing that I've noticed is there doesn't seem to be any cussing. So if you try to steer away from that, I should know that in advance.
Oh, really? No, we cuss. Maybe the ones that you've listened to.
Maybe I listened to the wrong ones. Okay.
Yeah, because mainly, I mean, we don't censor whatsoever. We
Cool. I just wanted to make sure. Cool.
Yeah. We just try to steer. The only thing we steer away from is politics, religion, all that stuff. It's just mainly just music oriented. But if you cuss, I mean, talk about whatever you want. It doesn't matter to us. Right on, man. All right, Jerry. Well, so yeah, why don't you tell me about where you grew up?
I'm originally from a town called Abingdon, Virginia, which is in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. It's just across the Tennessee border. Small town, somewhere around 5,000 people, 5,000 to 8,000 people. And it's kind of, that's with the county that's outside of the town limits. And it was kind of a split personality of a town in that there were a lot of backwoods country mountain people. And there were a fair amount of wealthy, affluent doctors and lawyers and such as well. So, and I kind of fit into neither exactly. So I kind of bounced back and forth between the two.
Okay, right on. Well, only 5,000 people in your town? Like, how did you get into music? Were there places to check out live shows or did you have to kind of travel to Nashville?
Man, for me growing up, the Castle side of the family, everyone played or sang in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, as far back as my music, as far back as any of my memories go, I remember them having parties, and they all skirted right on the edge of doing illegal and illegal stuff, and there was constant drama in all of their lives. And but when we got together for that party where everybody drank and did guitar pulls, and this goes back to I guess 3 or 4 for me.
Wow.
I just remember the emotion of what they would when they would sing and how it was like they were pouring out their soul. And I mean, I remember that far back of going, oh, this is what I want to do. And it's so funny because those emotions were generally not positive. Hey, this is a good time emotion. But nonetheless, it's like, when there's a real energy or a authentic energy, we're drawn to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. What was the first instrument you learned? Guitar? From
those
parties?
Yeah. The first instrument I learned was guitar. However, again, because, a lot of the Castles were some shady characters. My mother wasn't overly eager to have me jump into the
music world.
And so she was like, you could take piano, which I did for, like a month or 2 months or something, nonsensical. But she forbid the guitar early on. And so for my 20th, for the Christmas that I turned 20, she gets completely out of left field. She got me a guitar. And
wow.
I was like, I'll show you. I'm going to be a deadbeat musician anyway.
So guitar you didn't play it until 20?
I didn't. That's when I started. And literally within, and it's not because I was this good. It was just because I was this delusional and this drawn to it. But I mean, literally within a year, I was out touring, playing shows, just because I was the guy that wasn't afraid. I had no idea how bad I was. It's like, hell, I can strum this thing and I can keep up with the drums and I'll sing with it. And so that was the beginning. Any of those recordings that I hear now, it still makes me cringe to this day.
That's funny. Well,
I would show up I would specifically remember, I would take my guitar everywhere, invited or not invited. And I remember showing up to a poker game when I was in college once, and I showed up, and I remember the guy saying, "Oh wow, you brought your guitar?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man." And he said, you want to put that in the closet?
You want to leave that by the door?
Let's lock that thing up. We don't need any inspiration to play cards, son.
That's funny. Well, at 20, then were you doing anything musical aside from the piano lessons prior to
Now I took
20
piano
years
lessons
old?
at like 7, and well, I take that back. I had started writing from a young, like 8, 9, 10. I remember writing little songs or little rhymes, where I was basically ripping off other songs that I had heard before.
Sure.
Taking the melody and changing the words. But yeah, it's really strange when you're drawn to it how you're going to do it no matter what.
Wow. Okay. 20, you get the guitar. Did you start writing music right away, or did you try to go the covers route, or was it always like? I know some people just go right into write originals, and they didn't want to have like their ideas tainted, so to speak, by like learning other people's stuff prior.
Yeah. So what happened was the very first weekend that I got my guitar, I had a couple of friends. I had a friend named Brian Jesse, and this kid knew every song under the sun on acoustic guitar. We got snowed in at a couple of girls' house over a long weekend.
There you go.
And he taught me. I swear, in the first weekend I had guitar, I knew 20 songs of 3-chord and 4-chord songs. And then I remember he taught me. I'd be like, "Oh man, I don't know that part." And he'd be like, just pretend like you do. Just keep going.
Just keep playing.
You're right. And so right after that, I joined a cover band. I forced myself into a cover band in which I was the lead singer, but I was such a bad guitar player that they would not allow me to play guitar just yet. So
only vocals.
It started off with covers, and it was like, the alternative movement, classic rock covers. That was kind of the two thing. If I dared bring anything that was country-ish in, then, it was like, no, man, not this band.
Oh, really? I would think that the country would be a huge hit in the covers world. I would think, yeah.
So growing up in the Appalachian Mountains with the cool kids, the deal was that you were against country or bluegrass at all costs. Like that's the
law. Oh, okay. The cool people weren't listening to the bluegrass.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And it's funny for me now. Like I really don't listen to a lot of country, but if I'm just going to sit down without any thought going into it, or like the country part just naturally comes out for me.
Right on. Okay. Well, then when did you start writing your first songs? Like you were in the cover band. Were you always writing your own songs?
Oh yeah. I was writing right off the rip. I was writing and recording on a cassette tape and, putting together demos just right off the rip. And I would say it took the guys probably, that band was called the Stumble Biscuits. And I think it took the Stumble Biscuits maybe a year somewhere in that neighborhood before they allowed me to bring in one of my originals and actually play it in front of people.
Okay. And did you guys from there start only playing original songs? Like, was that the band that kind of kept going with you?
It definitely evolved from that. It was a gradual process, one to half the show to, and at about that point, one of the guys in the band was like, "Well, I don't like his originals. I'm done with this." And he left, and we, and we replaced him, and we continued on. That became the first original band that was called Toast.
Oh, so you changed the name when you switched to all originals?
Yep, exactly. And Toast kind of evolved into more of what they call jam band, I guess, from there.
Oh, okay. And
I would say a song-oriented jam band, though.
Okay. And were you just singing in Toast also, or did you?
No, by the time Toast came along, I was playing guitar and singing as well.
Okay. And how far did that band go? Was it just locally, or?
Well,
you said you were touring early on. Was that?
Yeah. So we toured the Southeast United States quite a bit. I mean, it was almost like as soon as Toast was in, we were touring, and we'd play like Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Charleston, South Carolina, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, Savannah Beach, or Tybee Island's what it's called. The Gulf Shores of Alabama. So we played a bunch of beach towns essentially right off the rip.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
And then the bass player left the band, or was fired from the band, or we were about to come to blows or something. And at that point, we brought in a new bass player, and that incarnation of Toast moved to Nashville, Tennessee together.
Oh, okay. So you guys did move down to Nashville.
We all moved to Nashville together. Yep, we sure did.
Okay. And were you writing records down there, or did you guys?
Oh yeah, we
record
came
anything?
here and we're recording a record within the first year of being here as well. And you know that I'll never forget that session. The guy, the producer's name was Neil Capolino. That's done a bunch of stuff with I think Dolly Parton and Alison Krauss, folks like that. And and I remember Neil, you know, pulling me aside at one point, and my sister was in that band as well, and so we split.
Oh,
We
wow.
split the vocal duties, and she was actually a much better singer than me. And still is today. It just wasn't what she wanted to do. And he pulled me aside and he goes, "Hey man, I can tell that you're really passionate about music, but if you're going to do this, you're going to have to get some vocal lessons." Welcome to Nashville, man. You're going to be a star. So, you know, I asked for it, so I got it.
That's hilarious. Then you took the vocal lessons or no?
I did.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And how did you end up starting just your solo career? Was it quite quickly after that, or how long was Toast around for?
Yeah, that was the end of Toast. That record was the last record. It fell apart there, and you know, it was. I continued. I think I called the next band "The World Outside" is what we called it, and then that band went on and toured a whole lot of the Midwest, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, Minnesota. You know, and one year we did literally 264 dates.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's hard on the soul.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my goodness.
Touring, and we carried our own PA. It was one of those type of deals. You set up in the venue, and you play 5 nights that week. You know, like Tuesday through Saturday.
Wow.
So yeah, and so from there is kind of when the world out. Yeah, from there I was continuing to write originals, and I was starting to get a little bit of a buzz around Nashville about what I was doing. And so from there, you know, I kept having people coming in and out of the band. And, you know, with bands, the thing is when you're playing live and touring a lot is people attach to particular players in the band. So when you have, you know, Mark, the guitar player who plays a badass Les Paul solo, and people get used to seeing that when they show up to your show, and Mark with the Les Paul is no longer there, and it's now Vinny with the Telecaster, and you know, they're like, "Wait, what's this? This isn't what I signed up for." So, you know, at that point, I just kind of, you know what? As much as I love the idea of Led Zeppelin or the Who or band concept, the only thing that's going to be a constant here is going to be myself. So at that point, it all started becoming Jerry Castle and the backing band.
Oh, okay.
Jerry Castle and the Stride, I think, was one of them.
Okay. Yeah, so at least people knew when they were coming, you're there, but the rest of the characters might change.
Right. Dude with the afro is going to be up there bouncing around on the stage, but other people might not be.
Sure. Okay. And is that what led you to writing? Well, what, like the first record you put out was Not So Soft Landing, right?
You know, that's not actually the first record I put out. The first, but I took the records that I had done prior to that, I took offline.
Okay. So
about a year ago. I took them all offline, you know, and listening back in any of my previous records, I, you know, while there were songs that I felt like were still good songs, there was something in almost every song that just got on my last nerve by the time Soft Landing came along. And I went, you know what? I'm tired of having to introduce my music and then apologize for all the stuff that I put into the world that should have not went into the world. So it's just going to be from Not So Soft Landing on.
Okay.
So that, you know, and that record was a record that I learned for some reason, like the light bulb went off and everything started clicking, writing wise, particularly production wise on that. I just, it all, you know, like my approach to how to produce records really came to be from that record.
Do you feel like it was just the experience leading up to that point, or was it the people you're working around or working with?
It was a combination of things. There was a guy that I had worked with had recorded a bunch of records with, and he and I had been friends for a long time, all the way back to my days of living in Abingdon, Virginia. And you know, we had a bit of a up and down relationship. And so before we started that record, you know, we got together. I told him what kind of record I was looking to make, and I also expressed that, you know, there's no deadline here. There's no hurry. You know, with that being said, I want an all-in price, and I want everything to be fun that we do. I don't want this like when we're working on it, we're miserable the whole time in the name of the music. Like let's you know, let's enjoy the process. And so part of that process included part of that record was recorded in Topanga Canyon, and I worked with a keyboard player out there named Arlen Oscar, that was in Joe Bonamassa's touring band, and he had this really cool setup looking off of the mountain. That he had his entire basement that had windows all the way around, and you could see it. He had all of these vintage keyboards and synthesizers set up all over his basement. So that was awesome. And then I got the opportunity to work with Mike Green, the former president of NARIS. He did backing vocals, and we did it from his property in Topanga as well. And so just all of the combination of things, and kind of like the different vibes and personalities of people that were involved in it. It just, everything clicked, you know, and it was really the record that was kind of the first time that things went from being on a local or regional level to, I kind of moved to the national level in a sense at that point.
Okay. And what do you mean by national level? Like, were you getting radio play, or
I was getting radio play. I had a song on it called "She Kills" that went to it was #1 on the Roots rock music chart for
wow,
for 4 weeks, and then it was also finished #4 on the year of in the Roots rock music chart. And so there was that, and we were touring nationally. Like we toured the left coast, we toured all over the East, New York, Los Angeles, Nashville, like some bigger cities, Atlanta, Georgia. And you know, it was while it was fun and it was exciting, I also was very well aware of the amount of work. It was like, wow, I've just scratched the surface here. I'm not even close to having a sustaining career.
Right. Well, did that open any doors for you? Like, did you get signed to a record label at that point, or
no? It was one of those things. Really, it was a little bit of a like I was in Rolling Stone country for the first time then, and
awesome.
And that certainly opened some publicity doors and had a lot of other good national press from that. But you know, it kind of fizzled out, to be frank. And so at that point, it was still in 2016, at the end of 2016, and we had just gotten off of a West Coast run, and I just knew, like, well, you're gonna have to do another record. Like, that's you either do another record or you keep touring. And which do you enjoy doing more? Do you like recording in the studio, or do you prefer being out slugging it out on the road? Which I enjoy both, but you know, the creation process is the part that I've always been the most drawn to. And so, so at that point, I bought a Twin Apollo and started learning how to use that. And I bought the Machine, which is a programming little box and so I literally learned how to program and learned how to record sitting there on that. And that was the 2018 record, the
brand new hello
record. Yeah,
you wrote and recorded that yourself?
Yeah, wrote it.
Oh my gosh.
Played most of the instruments, had some overdubs, but sat, you know, for over a year, just, you know, I didn't come to a place where I thought, this is now complete. I came to the place where I went, I cannot take this anymore.
That's when you knew it was done.
Right. And scene.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's crazy. I was going to ask you what the milestone of that record was, but it sounds like just doing it all yourself. That's That's impressive in itself. Were you touring hard on that record as well?
We did tour on that. I kind of, by that record, I moved back to, I would say the amount of dates I did that year were somewhere in the 60 range, you know, very, very focused, like 3-day runs by and large. So yeah, and it had some more great press coverage there. Rolling Stone Country was on that one as well. But you know, it was another situation where, you know, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but when you put out a record, you have all of this, you have this big team that surrounds you leading up to putting the record out. And it feels so good. And it feels like it's a team against the world. And then you put that record out, and within a month, the publicist is gone, the radio campaign, it's like back to you against the world.
Right.
And so my default has always, for better or for worse, has always been, all right, time to write some more songs then.
That's awesome. And with that, you put out a record earlier this year, Midnight Testaments. I want to talk to you about, because you are so used to recording the record, put it out, and then tour heavily on it, right? Yeah. I mean, and then even with the next one, it was record the record, do like shorter runs, but you're still touring on the record to promote it.
Yep.
So now coronavirus hits, and where were you at with Midnight Testaments? Was the record done? Because I know you put it out in October. So tell me about where that process was and how that kind of affected you.
So that record was done coming into 2020, and or it was done all except for one song that ended up being added to it. But it was done. Was planning on putting it out in April of 2020. Was getting everything together. February 28th, we put out the first single, which was Tequila and Tears, and had more streams on it than I had on anything else before. I went, oh wow, cool. Feels like I'm on to something, maybe.
Yeah, over 100,000. I mean, you're on 140,000 on Spotify.
I mean, and prior to that, I think the most streams I had was probably 16,000. So it was a big jump from anything that I had.
That's amazing
before. And it was funny too that, you know, it's not a song that I necessarily had in my mind, like, oh wow, this is going to be the one that's going to actually come across to people.
That's funny, because you're not the first person I've heard that from, where it's like, I didn't know that was going to be a hit, and then sure enough, it's got a ton of plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to do the work. You know, I remember getting that advice early on from multiple older artists, and you know, when you're younger, it's difficult to process exactly what they're saying. You know, do your thing, be yourself, do the work. It'll work. If it's going to work out, it'll work out. But it's not going to work out if you're chasing it, which I never understood. And now I'm like, oh man, I wish I had processed that about 7 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you put the record out, you put the single out, Tequila and Tears. It's doing awesome. And then that was February. That stuff started shutting down March.
Yeah, so I started realizing at that point, like, this is going to be a suicide mission if you put your record out right now. And so I started trying to figure out the way to work. You know, we were all in a situation where we didn't know what to do. Like, okay, well, you're not on the tour. And, you know, I early on had, you know, listened to a bunch of podcasts, read a bunch of articles and blogs from leading epidemiologists that were talking about the severity of it. And so I feel like I grasped it pretty early on, what we were getting ready to be up against. And I think that kind of helped me to know, like, you're not going to be out touring in 6 months, dude. Like, you are locked down. And so I started two things that I did. One, I started putting out singles from that record in a manner that you would never get to do and continue to get press coverage under normal circumstances. Press outlets generally like full albums by and large.
Right.
But I started putting out singles from it, and I started putting out a video with each one of them. And in particular, I ended up meeting up with an animator that I found online. And so I started writing storyboards to songs like Pick Up Your Guitar or Calm. And I got this dude to animate my videos. And so I started doing some stuff that I'd never done, just trying to, you know, stretch out creativity wise and do some different things. And, you know, it kept me really, really busy was the thing between that. I was doing some of the live stream things, you know.
I was
live
going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not against it, but there comes this place with live streams where, and this might be just me as a listener or a fan, but I was able to stomach about 3 or 4 of those, and only of the highest quality. Right. You know, anything that's off somebody's iPhone, you've got me for about 3 minutes. Like, I can't take any more of that 4K frequency. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's like, people were doing them, and no, I don't think anyone obviously had the idea that this is going to be lasting this long. I mean, here in California, we're in San Diego. Our governor just came out today and shut everything down again. Parks, everything. I guess we're back to like March lockdown here in California again. So it's crazy. It's unfortunate. Obviously, nobody knew it was going to go this long. I always give the example of Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie. When it first started, he was like, I'm doing a live stream every day, like until it lifts up. And I'm like, yeah, you probably did 6 weeks in. You're like, that was a dumb idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Nashville's kind of the tale of 2 cities. You go to East Nashville, which is where I live, by and large, you know, it's pretty shut down, and you go out, everybody always has a mask on. You go down to Lower Broadway where the tourists still go, and there are days that it's like, does anybody know that there's a pandemic going on?
Right. I felt that way too. I'm like, oh, well, it doesn't seem like anyone really cares anymore.
If you add alcohol, people forget very quickly.
Totally. So with that, so you have the newest record out, Midnight Testaments. You were doing some live streams. And you have a new song coming out too, right?
Yep, I have a new song coming out on December the 18th.
Okay, let's hear about that. And was that song written recently and recorded recently?
So the situation with that song, when I did the last record, Midnight Testaments, I was in the studio so let me back up a little bit. While I was recording that record, the first version of what was going to be Midnight Testaments ended up being like a hodgepodge of songs that were leaning country and songs that were leaning kind of more classic rock, AAA. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the few people that are in my inner circle that I, you know, value their advice. And when I played it for them, you know, that's exactly what they said. They're like, it's a little bit of a, you know, what is it? Is it country? Is it singer-songwriter, classic rock? And, you know, and so I went, well, I'll just keep recording, and I'll have a country record, and I'll have, you know, this other record that's more singer-songwriter, classic rock. And so, With the Band was one of those songs that was recorded during that 2019 time. So, originally, that song was first in 2014. There was a gentleman from the Georgia Satellites, lead singer, Dan Baird, that I had used to play poker with. And I was looking on Facebook one day, this is back in 2014, and I saw him have a post about something with him playing with Bobby Keys.
Wow.
And now during the same time is like it's my adult phase of the Rolling Stones. I went through it as a teenager, and then as an adult, I went right back through it. And Exile on Main Street was just in constant play for me. And so I read Keith Richards' life book. I was reading Keith Richards' life book. I'd read Mick's autobiography. I was watching The Stones in Exile, the documentary, which was on Netflix. And every day that was on, I watched it every day. And so all of this is going on. So I don't know Bobby, but I know the character Bobby that I'm reading about in Keith's book and that I'm seeing on The Stones in Exile. And I'm like, and he just seemed like such a character, and so I fell in love with the character Bobby Keys that I was learning about there. So fast forward to the Facebook post of Dan Baird saying that he was looking forward to playing with Bobby Keys at the Mercy Lounge, and I was like, and so I sent him a message instantly. I said, "Hey, you know Bobby Keys? He lives in Nashville? You think there's any chance I could get him to play on a song for me?" I didn't have a song for him to play on.
Oh, well, write one tonight.
And so And so Dan said, let me check and I'll get back to you. And so he came back and said, here's his number. You know, he said, feel free to reach out. So I call him up. Hey, Dan gave me your number, blah, 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 blah. So he calls me back and he says, this is Jerry Castle. I said, yes, it is. He goes, and I already knew it. You know, I knew who it was because I had a number programmed in with a picture that I've already edited and put in.
9 different,
right.
10 different emojis after it.
Right. And so he was like, it's Bobby Keys. And he goes, I hear you want me to come play on one of your songs. And so I said, yeah. And he goes, well, first of all, if I'm going to play on your song, obviously you're going to have to let me know when. And second of all, you got to pay me in cash. I said,
he knows how this works.
So it's exactly like, you know, he's exactly right off the rip, like the character that I've been reading about and seeing in the documentary.
That's hilarious.
And so I said, you know, I asked him to let me call him back. I called one of my friends that was actually in the band Toast that I had moved to Nashville with, and that had went on to primarily focus on being an audio engineer. And so we get a studio date set up. I get a song cut to get that I want to have Bobby on. And so Bobby comes to the studio. He walks in, takes a saxophone right out right off the bat. And he's like, all right, boys, I imagine if you want me to, it was just me, Brandon, and Bobby. I imagine if you want me to play on this, you're going to have to let me hear it. And so we hit play, and he sat there and, you know, blew around once, and he did another, play it again, did another round of blowing it around, and then of kind of fiddling around with it. He goes, all right, I'm ready to give it a pass. Now here's a part that people that are listening that can't see is really funny. So if the console is facing forward, one direction in the room, to the left, you have to walk to the left to get out of the studio, but you also have to walk to the left and then up a set of stairs that go around to an overdub room that's up in front of the studio board. Okay. So every time Bobby would go to the left and then around and up to the overdub room, he would go out the door, taking him out of the studio. And I was so fanboyed out that I would follow him right out the door every single time. I came and I did it. I did it again, like 3 times in a row. So yeah, he came in and laid it down, and it was you know, he was the real deal. And it was a great, you know, for me, there's very few times in my life that I've been around other musicians that I have felt very fanboy, and Bobby, I felt very fanboy. You know, I'm sure
it's cool.
It was a combination of the fact, again, that I was right in the middle of reading the book, you know, watching the documentary and all that. And so I was just fanboyed out. But then unfortunately, you know, when I got through with the song, as the years went on, and you know, obviously Bobby passed away later that year, I was really disappointed with the song that I had put and the performance that I had put around Bobby's part. Bobby's part was classic Bobby to me. Like it was exactly what you would expect Bobby Keys to kind of do, like those signature major pentatonic runs that guitar players do a lot of times. And you know, and it's distinguishably Bobby Keys. And I was just so disappointed. And so when I was working on this record in 2019, when I remembered that, and I pulled the track back up from an old drive that, you know, you can hear the fan rattling against the drive, like, oh, come on, get it up till I transfer it. And I got it up, and I was kind of like picking out what worked and what didn't work. And eventually I took everything out except for a metronome and Bobby's part. I went, what if I just rewrote a song around Bobby's part? You know, and then it was like, how are you gonna do that? Like, you got to have the exact same chords, and then it turns out you don't have to have the exact same chord. So I started putting a progression together, and you know, it was one of those things of just staying dug in and in the saddle. Like, you know, I'd be ashamed of some of the lyrics that were coming out on that, but eventually when it got to that hook with the band, then not only was it a song that that I liked and could be proud of. I was really happy that it tied into the life that Bobby had lived, and then it paid more tribute to Bobby as opposed to being just about myself.
I love that. Yeah, so you're able to kind of reconstruct the song and make it more focused, like a more of a like a homage to him, so to speak.
Tribute, exactly.
Yeah, tribute. That was the word I was looking for. That's cool. That's really cool. And that's coming out in a couple of weeks now.
Yep, December the 18th, we get the ball rolling with that.
That's really cool that you're able to, you know, put out another song, kind of gave you another single to release, and really, you know, pay that tribute to him. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm glad, you know, the 18th also is Bobby, would have been Bobby's birthday. And it's Keith Richards' birthday. So that's why December the 18th was the date that was chosen.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
And I didn't want it to just be lost on an album either. I wanted it to be something that, you know,
like, yeah, you showcase it, and yeah, like it's kind of worked out as far as the way that you're going to release it. That's amazing that it was able to be done on his birthday, and you're able to kind of rework the song to make it exactly how you wanted it.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of like, there's in the music community here, there's a lot of guys that I know. Brad Pemberton that plays drums with Steve Earle, Chart Kinsenlov that played guitar with them, and Dan Baird, who's like to this day one of the most energetic live performers in his 60s, you know, that you'll ever see. Like, he still gives it all. Like, those guys all played in a band with Bobby called the Suffering Bastards.
Oh, cool.
And they just thought the world of him and thought the world of that experience.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I do have one more question for you.
Lay it on me.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
You know, that's one of those questions that I would say, you know, in retro, I think when you first start being an artist, I think that instinct of what you think you are is the right instinct. That doesn't mean that everything you're doing is right and that that's what you're going to be, but that instinct is important, and it's important that you follow that as far as you can before you start being edited and, you know, curtailed, and people start directing your music for you. You know, I think that's important, and I think trying to find any shortcut other than doing the work is a futile, it's the biggest mistake you can make, and you have to love doing the work. If you don't love doing the work, then you're kidding yourself. Bringing it backward.